Brad Jacobs, founder of the trucker XPO, unveiling plans for basically his next company. We've been waiting to see what industry he is going to be targeting. It's news now. We know what it is. It's going to be targeting the $800 billion building material supplies industry. Brad Jacobs joins us now. Brad, great to see you. We've been anticipating this news for quite some time now. I imagine you've screened a whole range of industries before settling on building materials distribution. I can kind of see the logic from your point of view. It's a skill set, an area you've always been interested in. But why this one? Why this area?
Well, you're absolutely right. I looked at over 500 opportunities in dozens of different industries. And this is the one that checked all the boxes. It's large, it's $800 billion. So if I'm going to build a company that's tens of billions of dollars in revenue, I need a large industry. And this is a large industry. This is an industry that's growing. It's got organic growth to it. It's been growing 7% CAGR over the last 5 years. This is an industry where there's lots of things to buy. There's 7,000 building products distributors here in North America. There's 13,000 in Western Europe. So 20,000 potential acquisition targets. And there's benefits of scale. As you get bigger, you get better in this industry. Yep. And finally, there's an opportunity to apply technology, to apply AI to the business to make it better. So I'm excited about it.
Brad, what else made the list? What else was on the final list? I've spent this year talking about how many banks there are in the United States. That could be a roll-up opportunity. There's lots of energy companies, maybe one less today after we've seen the Oxy deal, but there's lots of energy companies in the States. Why this one versus those ones, and what kind of made the final list down to the last two or three?
I spent a lot of time in Texas and Louisiana and West Virginia looking at oil and gas, looking at energy, because you can buy properties for 2 times cash flow. So you have all your money back in 2 years, and then you have like a 18-year tail of royalties after that. However, I talked to the 17 sovereign wealth funds and pension funds in Singapore, in Canada, and the Middle East that have historically backed XPO, and I'll be looking for financing on this company from. And almost none of them really were interested in financing energy. They want to get out of energy, not into energy for ESG reasons. So I figured if I'm going to build a big company, I'm going to need access to capital. And if there's no access to capital, or a very limited access to capital in energy, that's not for me.
All right, fair enough. So clearly, Brad, you took a lot of time, and it's Kaylee in Washington, deciding what industry you were going to focus on. Now that you have, I wonder how much time you're planning on taking before actually making that first deal. When should we expect it to happen? Well,
we have to close the $1 billion pipe that we're putting into Silversun. That should close in the next few months. And then we'll spin that company back to its legacy shareholders. And they'll have a less than 0.5% ownership in the new company. And the new company will be $1 billion cash rich, no debt, and publicly traded. And the ticker symbol will be QXO, which is the name of the new company, QXO. And then we can do some significant amount of acquisition activity, and we'll be off to the races after that.
How quickly can you do that, Brad? What's the time frame? What are the milestones you're looking at?
I expect to be at least $1 billion revenue run rate by the end of year 1. I expect to be at least $5 billion of revenue run rate after 2 or 3 years. And I fully expect to be at tens of billions of dollars of revenue over the next decade. That's the timetable that I've got in my mind.
All right, it's quite a timetable, Brad. Where are you planning to start? Any specific subsector that you're looking to focus on, somewhere you want to move first?
We're talking to a number of companies, and there's building products distributors all across the board. Every material that goes into a house, goes into a building, goes into a school, goes into a church, goes into a data center, everything that's got a roof on it has building products in it. So it's huge. So HVAC suppliers, plumbing materials, electrical is a very big one. Electricity is something that's growing. It's in almost every facility there is. Roofing, tiles, windows, doors. We're looking at everything. We want to be a diversified, well-balanced buildings products distributor.
Okay, so you're going to look across a number of subsectors. Then you've got to figure out how to kind of, in some ways, pull them all together. You talked at the beginning, Brad, about a fragmented industry. So there's a margin opportunity there in terms of the roll-up. You can create scale. You can generate margin opportunity. You also mentioned technology. What's technology penetration like in this industry? How are you going to apply it, and what kind of an operational advantage do you think it could give you?
The tech component to this business plan is big. The way we're going to use tech in this industry is, number one, we're going to use it for pricing rather than just picking a price out of the air or by tribal knowledge. It's going to be done very, very methodically through the tech. Number two, there's a warehouse component to this business because you buy all these materials wholesale, you store them in warehouses or distribution centers, and then you truck them, delivery trucks, to the end user. Sometimes they're drop shipped, sometimes they're stored in the local branches, but there's a lot of warehouses, there's a lot of DCs. In my due diligence, I was surprised to find that the warehouses and DCs, some of them have some level of automation. None of them are anywhere near as automated as GXO is, for example, in those 1,000 warehouses that they have there. And on the delivery part, there's some level of route optimization going on, but not a significant amount. So there's tons and tons of ways to use technology, and particularly machine learning and AI, to take waste out of the system, to take inefficiencies out of the whole supply chain, out of the value chain, and I intend to do that. And also from an e-commerce perspective, e-commerce now is about, I see estimates between 3 and 5% of sales are done digitally. That reminds me of where truck brokerage was 10 years ago. And today, truck brokerage is, well, wow. At RXO, truck brokerage, 97% of the orders are either sourced or covered digitally. And I expect that's where this industry is going as well.
This industry feels like it's about to be on a very steep learning curve, and you're going to be doing and teaching a lot of the lessons. Brad, the other thing that I think we're all aware of is that there is a lack of housing, and that America, Europe, a lot of places now need a lot more housing. There are huge amounts of inefficiencies that exist on a building site. We need to figure out many of those. There is also a massive labor shortage that is becoming increasingly apparent. This is an industry that still does things in many ways as it has done for generations. How do you lever the technology that you're talking about, maybe to improve things on that front as well? And is there a strong desire, is there a willingness within this industry to adopt that kind of technology? And what role are you going to play within it?
So with regard to the first part of your comments, I absolutely agree there's a housing shortage. Most industry observers think there's about 3 million units short here in the United States alone. And so that'll spur construction. And in terms of the age of the housing, typical house is about 40 years old, a little over 40 years old. I mean, when I was a kid, it was like 10 years old. So that's going to continue to enable lots of repair and remodeling, which is a big part of building products distribution, R&R. And then if you look at the non-residential part, the commercial part, they're even older. I mean, a typical building out there is over 50 years old. And then there's the third leg. In addition to residential and non-residential, there's infrastructure. All the roads, the bridges, the tunnels, the piping, everything that needs to be done to fix the infrastructure in the country, which is significant. Most people estimate there's about $2 trillion of infrastructure construction that needs to get done. So there's big, big opportunity there. With respect to the second part of your question about the technology, this industry, I don't want to give the wrong impression. There are some companies here who are starting to use technology and are doing a good job at it. I watched the investor day of one of the big companies, Builders First Source last week, and I like what they were doing with technology. I mean, it's a very, very good start. I would say it's like in the third inning compared to where the transportation industry is or where the warehouse industry is. In the warehouse industry, if you look at GXO, you have warehouses that are fully automated. The warehouse of the future for GXO is the warehouse right now, where instead of having hundreds and hundreds of people picking and packing and moving everything around, you have robots and cobots, collaborative robots. And that's where the world is going, and I believe that's where this industry is going as well.
All right, Brad Jacobs, XPO Logistics Chairman, thank you so much for joining us with a look at what your future plans are. Really fascinating stuff. We appreciate your time.